Hi guys, I'm Erica. Welcome to Hack Your Health. In today's video, I'm going to give you some dinner ideas for the Specific Carbohydrate Diet, and I'm going to focus on things that are easy to make and not too complicated. So my favorite kinds of dinners on the Specific Carbohydrate Diet were things that I could easily just throw in the oven without creating a lot of extra dishes and that had a lot of leftovers. I found that by focusing on those kind of qualities in a dinner, I would save a lot of time and energy. And instead of spending all of my time cooking or in the kitchen, I would then have enough time to do this diet and also do everything else that I needed to do in my life. It can also be more affordable to cook that way because if you buy especially meat in a larger quantity or a larger cut, it's often a lot cheaper per pound than buying a smaller package or a smaller amount. So that's another thing to consider. So the favorite meal that I had on the Specific Carbohydrate Diet was roasting an entire chicken, and I would get a good quality large, pasture raised chicken. I could eat that for several days, and then I would use the bones to make a soup with afterwards. And basically I just put the entire chicken, I put an onion inside it, surrounded it with vegetables, put on some spices, and that would last me easily like 2 days of dinners and lunches as well. And then I would add whatever was left to the soup I would make with the bones. So that was something that really went a long way. And even though it takes a while to cook, the prep time is pretty short. And if you'd like to see my recipe for that, I have a video about that on my channel as well. And with the chicken and with a lot of other meals, I would eat beets a lot on the Specific Carbohydrate Diet because I read somewhere that it was good to eat beets every day. I didn't really eat them every day, but I ate them regularly, partially because I've heard that they're good for cleansing, but also because they're a really good replacement for potatoes and other carbs that you're used to having as a side. And basically I would just cook them in the oven usually, or you could also steam or boil them, and then have salt, pepper, and butter on them. And I found that those were a really nice side for a lot of meals. I also ate a lot of broccoli and carrots cooked as sides. And if you want to see a full grocery shop, I have a video about that on my channel as well. So briskets and roasts are another dinner idea that I liked a lot, and another thing that cooks slowly, but then you have a pretty good quantity of food that you can either share or save for future lunches and dinners. Another thing that I really liked to make was either chicken thighs or chicken wings or drumsticks. And those only take 45 minutes versus an hour and 45 minutes of cooking time for the full chicken. So on days when I had less time to wait, I would often make that. It's also really easy to eat those as leftovers, so it's easy to cook extra chicken wings or chicken thighs or drumsticks and have that as the next couple of days' lunches. As a side for that or for beef, I would often make a mashed rutabaga. So this is kind of as a replacement for mashed potatoes that's Specific Carbohydrate Diet friendly. So I would buy a rutabaga, which is kind of like a turnip at the store, and peel it and then cut it into cubes and boil it until it was soft. So basically a lot like how you would make mashed potatoes. Drain off the water and then mash it with a potato masher and add salt, pepper, and butter. And that tastes really good. It doesn't taste exactly the same as mashed potatoes. It has more of a root kind of flavor, but it's not strong. And then I would have that as a side for, something like roast beef or whatever else you're having for dinner. And I found that that was a really nice side that also people really liked. So if I had guests for dinner, that was a good thing that I could make that people were always like, oh wow, what's this? That's really good. So I would recommend trying that if you haven't before. Another really nice dinner idea is spaghetti squash with meatballs. And I have a video about that as well. That is super quick to prepare and really easy, doesn't make much fuss or mess. You can make extra meatballs all at the same time and then freeze them, and then you can just pull them out of the freezer as needed if that's something that appeals to you. And basically, spaghetti squash is a good base if you're used to eating pasta, where you could still make similar dishes like the meatballs, or even some of the sauces are Specific Carbohydrate Diet friendly or can be. and you can replace the carb base with spaghetti squash. That's a pretty simple replacement. Squash in general was another food that I found really easy to make and enjoyable to eat on the Specific Carbohydrate Diet, because there's several different varieties of squash, and if you're just looking for a quick side, it's pretty easy to just cut a squash in half and bake it in the oven with some salt or some cinnamon or whatever it is that you'd like to add for flavoring. And that's really nice for adding a colorful and kind of filling side as well. Another thing that's great about some of these vegetable kind of sides is on the diet, I myself was trying to eat as much grass-fed butter as I could, basically, because it has so many great healing properties. So I would cook all these vegetables and then eat them with grass-fed butter, and I found that that was a really easy way to include that in my diet. So of course, fish is another easy meal idea, and it's a great source of omega-3s, so it's good to eat fish on a regular basis. And I prefer wild-caught salmon, sockeye salmon or pink salmon or something like that myself, and you can just have lemon juice on it or dill or whatever you like, and then bake it for 15 minutes. Serve it with whatever sides you like, and that's another simple meal idea. And I also tried to eat liver on a regular basis while I was on this diet, and like the bones, liver is often considered undesirable in our culture, even though it is the most nutritionally complete or dense food that we as humans have available to us. It's really high in vitamin A and copper and tons of other vitamins and minerals that are often lacking. And a lot of us who have had a situation where our digestive system wasn't absorbing or digesting foods properly can have some nutritional deficiencies as a result of that. So I would really recommend eating liver, once a week or once every 2 weeks or whenever you can. I just would cook it either by itself or with onions, which is kind of the traditional way of eating it, and just don't overcook it. Just kind of make it to medium rare, so when it's still slightly pink inside, and then the texture will be a lot better and the taste will be a lot better. And I found that eating liver was really helpful. It gives you a feeling of energy, or at least that's what I found, and it's really nutritionally complete. So I would recommend including that for dinners every once in a while. Another thing that you can buy really inexpensively and easily is chicken livers, and those are so small that you don't really need to cut them up or anything, and you can just throw those in with some kind of stir fry, or you can look up different recipes for chicken livers as well. And I found the taste of those was actually pretty mild. So that's something that not a lot of people talk about anymore, is eating liver, but I would definitely recommend including it in your diet just because of the nutritional benefits. And it's super affordable because people aren't buying it very often right now. So there's really no reason not to eat it. So of course you can also have soups and stews, and really you can have whatever you want for dinner. So if you're feeling like you're just not up to eating a full meal, I would recommend eating a soup. That's what I would do fairly frequently. Throw a few vegetables in there so they're all really soft, have some chicken or whatever in there, and then everything's just kind of easy to digest. And you still feel full as long as you throw enough kind of vegetables and everything into the soup. And I would also eat things like omelets or other egg dishes for dinner quite often, because it's just easy to make and it's easy to have some eggs around in the fridge. And more recently, I have kind of stepped away from eating complete whole meals every time, because I've discovered that I don't really feel better when I'm eating a whole bunch of different kinds of foods at the same time. So sometimes I will just cook, some chicken thighs and just have that for dinner, or a steak and just have that for dinner, which is kind of leaning towards the whole carnivore side of things, although I wouldn't go fully carnivore, and I don't do that every day. But I do find that in terms of my digestion, a lot of the times I just feel a lot better when I just have a simple meal like that, or just have some squash and chicken and just have the two things, for example. So I would recommend as well, like, keeping it simple. If that's what makes you feel better, there's no reason to put a whole bunch of time and energy and work into cooking all these different kinds of things when really you'd be just as satisfied with just having one meat, one side, and being done with it. Of course, if you're cooking for a family or for others and they have different preferences, maybe that's not an option for you, but I have found over years of kind of adapting that I've gone to the side of having less things at once when I can, and I would recommend experimenting and seeing what feels good for yourself. Of course, overall, you still want to have a varied diet and include a wide variety of foods, but in each individual meal, it's not, in my opinion, necessary to go the whole mile every single time, and sometimes it's just easier to digest and easier to accomplish to just have a really simple dinner. And you can also make salads if you digest raw vegetables well and get a bit more experimental with the kinds of things that you're putting in the salads. For example, sometimes people cut up apple or avocado or some nuts and seeds. But if you're close to the beginning, I would personally recommend staying mostly away from those kinds of things, just because there's so many factors that are involved that could be troubling. But that's just my personal experience, and feel free to experiment. I'd also recommend getting the highest quality meat and vegetables that you can comfortably afford. So if you have access to grass-fed beef and butter and bones, I would recommend buying them, just because the animal is going to be in a better state of health, most likely, and the nutritional content of those foods is often higher. Lard is an example of that, where when the pigs are outside and having access to sunlight, basically there's a very good quantity of vitamin D in the lard, whereas if they're raised indoors and they don't have access to sun, then it's not a source. So it's similar concept to that, where the healthier, more happily raised on their natural diet, for example, grass-fed versus grain-fed beef, even though they're both good, the grass-fed is just going to be a higher quality. So if you can afford it, I would recommend it. And same thing with vegetables. I feel a good idea to reduce exposure to pesticides if possible, just because those can act as an antibiotic or they could be irritating to the system. So things like lettuce or kale or other highly sprayed crops, I would recommend trying to get organic or no spray if you can. And other things don't matter as much, like things like avocados, for example, which aren't sprayed very heavily. If it's just what's available and what you can access, I wouldn't stress out about it. But it is something to keep in mind, is just how the food is raised and grown, and that will affect the nutritional quality and the potential for things that your body could be sensitive to be in the food. So I would recommend seeking out the highest quality food that you can in general, but not stressing out about it. So I hope this is helpful to you. Overall, I found that keeping things really simple was the best strategy for me. And once you get into a routine, like cooking something once a week and another thing once a week, it's easy to fill in all the meals that way. And I really hope that this is helpful to you and that you've gotten a few ideas out of it. And if you're just starting the diet, I really wish you all the best and encouragement, and I hope that it gives you good results. And if you're interested in my other specific carbohydrate diet recipes and videos, I have them in a playlist on my channel. And if you have any questions, comments, or video suggestions, please let me know. I'm always happy to answer questions or to hear your stories or anything else that you would like to share. And if you liked this video, please let me know by pushing like. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, then please subscribe. And all the best on your healing journey. Thank you. Bye.